thanks for, yay, behind, that's in behind, there's a little hook, behind, no, behind the yeah. Thank you for coming. So this series is something new this semester. We're doing it every other Monday in this room, and we have a bunch of speakers from different institutions from across New York State. And it's sponsored by Cornell Minds Matter and Students for Eating Disorder Awareness, Support, and Recovery, which is a new organization on campus this semester. So tonight we have the pleasure of having Lauren Nickerson. She is from Cornell Healthy Eating Program at Gannett Health Services. She's a registered dietitian, and she works mostly with on nutrition education and with people who have issues with disordered eating or diagnosed eating disorders. And one of her main mottos that she tries to instill in her life and in her work is everything in moderation. So tonight she will be speaking about her work with nutrition. And without further ado, Lauren.
All right, so thank you guys so much for coming. I do like to make my talks interactive, so if you guys want to participate, that's really great. So if I put out questions at all and you guys want to shout out any answers or share anything, feel free. So basically what I'm going to talk about today is really just how nutrition can influence one of the main things that you guys are here for, and that's school and academics. And so really just talking about how when maybe nutrition's out of whack, you know, what can happen in regards to academic performance, and really just what you can do to eat for A's. So when we think of healthy eating, is there any reasons that you guys think of why healthy eating might be important? Anything that anyone can think of? Yep.
Preventing disease.
Okay, so preventing different diseases, whether it be almost anything, right? Whether it be cancer, diabetes, heart disease. Okay, anything else that anyone thinks of that healthy eating is really important for or can help with? Yep. Energy. Right, and energy is really one of the things that's important when we think about, you know, eating for school, eating for academic performance, because a lot of times what can happen is if your eating isn't completely balanced, if things are missing from your diet, if you're not eating at the right times, you can feel that a lot with energy. I'm sure a lot of us have felt that. You know, probably a perfect example is if you wake up late and you miss breakfast. You know, then you can really start to feel mid-morning of where your energy is really low. You know, another thing that healthy eating can really help with and is important for is immune function. So a lot of times I think that's something that may not be one of the foremost things that we're thinking about, but even just more immediate than preventing different diseases is helping us so that we're not getting sick. Because if we're getting sick, we're probably missing classes. You know, we don't have the energy to put into schoolwork, and so that's really something that can influence it as well. Another thing is bone development. So healthy eating is really important. You guys are really in this like really peak age group. Most people in college are in a peak age group where they're building bones. So usually by your later 20s, early 30s, your bone building time is over. So if you're still in that window of being before that, you absolutely can build strong bones, and that's just one thing that's really important for healthy eating that will really, really help with. Even though it seems like a long time off till you're, you know, 65 or 70, you want to make sure you have the strongest bones that you can when that time comes. It also can help with energy, as someone said, and with mood. So those are some of the things that healthy eating can help with and how it can really help just in everyday life. But kind of going back a step, you know, what is this kind of ominous healthy eating? So is there anything that comes to mind for anyone when you hear healthy eating, either including or not including, or just things that you think about? Yeah?
The food pyramid.
Okay, so the food pyramid. And actually, there is something that replaced the food pyramid. I don't know if anyone has seen it, but it used to be I guess most recently it was that pyramid with the stripes of the different colors, which was a little bit abstract. And now it's a plate. So it's the same thing, it just is a different format. So now it's actually a visual plate of this is how much of each food group you should have. But absolutely, I mean, those, just being general guidelines that are set for healthy eating for us as Americans. Is there anything else that people think of when they hear healthy eating? How often do you think we should be eating? Anyone know? Okay, so it can definitely depend on the person. For most people, eating every 3 to 4 hours is usually a good goal. Sometimes when we go longer than that, that's when we might start to feel energy drops. So we might feel, now I'm feeling lightheaded, I'm maybe feeling like my stomach is hungry, I'm maybe feeling tired, maybe I'm feeling cranky, moody, any of those things if we're really going long periods of time in between eating. So going back to what you said about the food pyramid or the plate, it's including balance. So I know in the beginning, Angelica said, that one of my favorite things is everything in moderation. And that, really is absolutely what I really think is important, what I try to do, and what I've seen can work for other people as well. And so part of that is having all the food groups, and having them in the right amount. So what might be some of the different food groups? Anyone know a food group?
Vegetables.
Vegetables, yes. What are some of the other food groups? Fruit, protein, grains or starchy foods, fats or lipids. You guys are forgetting my favorite group. Dairy for your bones, but dairy is the other group. So really trying to have all of the food groups at meals, having balance. Sometimes one of the food groups that can slip away a lot of times is carbohydrates. Maybe that might be one that maybe if we are maybe more concerned about what we're eating or maybe eating more restrictedly, sometimes carbs are one of the first groups that can go. I think that sometimes carbs can get a bad name for themselves. That, maybe a lot of times we think that they're unhealthy, or you hear sometimes about if people are dieting, maybe they're cutting back on carbs. We can hear things like that a lot. So I think carbs, unfortunately, get a bad name for themselves because absolutely carbs are something that's important. Carbs are one of our first sources of energy for our body and for our brain. So our brain really runs on glucose. So when we think about, academics and what we really need to do to keep ourselves in tip-top shape in our brain, absolutely making sure we're having some carbohydrates at each meal. Also that we're having protein at each meal. Protein can really help us to feel full. It can help so that we're not having food cravings. It also is just important for our overall health, for our muscles. One of our most important muscles. Anyone know what one of our most important muscles or the most important muscle is? Your heart, right. So, absolutely that's why, protein is just really important, really helping to keep us in physical well shape and just physically healthy. Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
So if say you're having like a mid-morning snack, should that snack, is the goal to have like a little, obviously you might not be able to have every food group in that snack,
Yeah.
but like, is the goal to have, as many as you can, like carb, protein, lipid?
So that's a great question. So at meals, we really want to be trying to have as many of the different food groups as we can. At a minimum, definitely having carbohydrates or starchy foods, protein, and then fruit or vegetable, kind of at a minimum at meals. Then at snacks, it's kind of different for each person. Maybe some people might do a smaller meal, and maybe their snack is more like a smaller meal. Maybe other people for snacks are doing something that is much smaller than their meals. At a minimum, what I would say is really trying to have 2 food groups at snacks. And actually, one of the things that I did put in the back there was this handout that says Mini Fridge Makeover, if anyone grabbed it. It basically just gives you some really good ideas about things that you could keep like in a dorm room fridge or that you could keep to have as snack foods. And so really trying to pair like 2 foods together. So ideally something that has some protein in it with something that has some carbohydrates in it. So maybe like an apple and peanut butter, or some pita chips and hummus, or cheese and crackers, or cheese and a piece of fruit. So something like that. Were you gonna say something
No,
else?
that's just a follow-up question.
Yep.
I know, well, I've heard it's, better to get nutrients from whole, like, actual foods versus, enriched things, but like, something like Luna bars, like, I like Luna bars a lot, and they have vitamins and minerals added to them.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on supplementation, or are you?
I'll talk about it now. So one of the best things about something like a protein bar or a Luna bar or a Cliff bar or something like that is that it's convenient. So we probably could get very similar macronutrient breakdown, so being like the protein, the carbs, the fat, whatever, it's in it, if we were to have, say, like a turkey sandwich. That's another food that has some protein and some carbohydrates in it, and maybe we put on a little bit of mayo and we have some fat. So similar macronutrients. The vitamins, of course, are going to be a little bit different, but generally, we could make a food or a meal or part of a meal that could be similar to a protein bar or some type of Luna bar or something. It's really convenience. So, sometimes maybe that's not workable. If you guys were on campus all day and then you're coming to this, maybe your snack beforehand, maybe it's not feasible to pack the turkey sandwich at 8 o'clock this morning when you left your apartment and have it with you all day. It's going to get squished, it's going to get rotted, all of these things. So, maybe it's more feasible to pack a Cliff Bar and have that as a snack. So it's really, either one can really be fine. It's really about what's going to be convenient. And sometimes if things aren't convenient, then it can be easier not to do them. So, maybe if the option is, well, I'm going to buy something, but maybe that won't be convenient, or I'm going to pack this bar to have, or to have those for cases of emergency, because, back to the turkey sandwich, that's not something you could leave in your bag for a week. Something like the bar you could, and then when you need it and you need something quick, you have it there. So, ideally, I wouldn't really call that like a supplement, but when it comes to like vitamin supplements or something, ideally we're getting our nutrition from actual foods, but things like a vitamin supplement can be helpful if we can't, or things like a bar can really be helpful to help us keep balanced nutrition if maybe, other foods aren't going to be as convenient. Okay, so before that, we were talking about snacks. So really having meals, having snacks throughout the day, really that can help us to keep our energy up. It can really help us to keep our brain functioning. It can help with better concentration. And so, having meals that ideally are including all the different food groups, having snacks that are coming from 2 food groups, really trying to have some protein in there. With meals, a lot of times we hear breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard that before. I think that they're all important, but definitely breakfast is really important. One analogy that I heard before that really stuck with me is if you were going on a road trip and you were going to go drive from here to New York City, from Ithaca to New York City, and you left with your gas tank on empty, you're not going to get very far. Really, it's the same way for your day. So if you get up, and you don't have breakfast, either because you purposely skip breakfast or because you sleep late or, whatever other reasons, it's really like starting your day with your gas tank on empty. And the body is a little bit more adaptable than the car. The car is gonna, break down much before we even get too far out of Ithaca, but your body, unfortunately, it can kind of try to adapt itself, but it's not something that's really sustainable. So maybe you can get through a day or even a longer period of time without eating breakfast, but really long term, you're gonna see some of those effects from it. Does anyone know any of the effects that you might feel if you are skipping breakfast? Or has anyone heard of anyone having any or experienced any that you can think of? There might be ways that you would feel.
Lightheadedness?
Yep, absolutely. Lightheadedness. You might just feel generally tired. Did someone else have something?
I would say, like, more cravings.
Yep.
Like hungry or more.
Right, you're gonna get hungry by the time lunch comes. A lot of things can look good, and sometimes even maybe portions larger than what you would normally eat can look good, and sometimes that can lead to overeating or binging later because your body's just so hungry. A lot of times we crave carbohydrates. People might crave salt foods, sweet foods. You might have experienced that or heard people saying, that they're really craving those types of foods. It's not random that that happens. It absolutely is biological because our body really needs carbohydrates, and so we're craving more simple carbohydrates that are going to give us energy quicker, that might be in some of our sweet foods or some of our salty foods. Did you have something like that?
Oh, difficulty focusing.
Right. Right, and so when we think about, just academics, school, doing your best that you can, if you have trouble focusing or you have trouble concentrating in class or on exam, then absolutely that's going to make things harder.
Sorry, another question. What about like if you wake up and maybe you don't feel hungry or you don't think you need to eat, is it better to have a little something like consistent? Say like whatever, you leave your house at 8:30 every morning, like have a little something each morning, even if maybe you don't feel hungry. Is it better to have something?
So it's really good to have something within an hour of waking up. So when we wake up in the morning, our metabolism is the highest. So really we want to feed our metabolism. That's when our body needs nutrition, it needs calories, it needs energy, so that's when we want to put it in. And so really having something. Maybe some people feel like they can't have their full breakfast, at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, but maybe they have part of their breakfast and then some more later on. But even if, I've heard people say, well, I'm not a breakfast person, or I don't get hungry in the morning. Even if you aren't feeling that way, over time, if you get your body in the habit of having things early in the morning, your body kind of adapts to it, and it will adapt to having food at that time and feeling hungry at that time. So even if you don't feel hungry, yes, still having something. We'll let him go, yes.
So obviously, long-term restrictions can have profound impact on your metabolism.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what kind of impact would, say, skipping breakfast a few days a week have on your metabolism throughout each day?
So throughout the day, it's even going to slow it down throughout the day. Because you're really suppressing your metabolism and you're not getting the calories when your body needs it. And so over time, even if it seems like, well, this is minimal restriction or minimal things that I'm missing, that absolutely, really can add up. So even things that aren't, really drastic in terms of restricting or of skipping foods, even if it's just some, over time, it absolutely adds up. Does that kind of answer your question? And not only just with that, the other thing is also bone health. It's also going to have, it can have effects on bone health, especially given what food groups you're missing, just on vitamin and mineral, possibilities for deficiency, because again, you're missing some of your food. Ideally, breakfast should be about 1/3 of our nutrition or 1/3 of our calories for the day. So over time, that's 33% each day, so even if it's not every single day, it's a very significant amount. And not only that, but even aside from just, metabolism, it really can absolutely lead to cravings later on. And what often happens a lot of times is this under-over cycle, where if you are skipping breakfast or other meals, then later on in the day you're having cravings. And it really can happen a lot of times when people are eating really small portions in the morning or skipping the meal altogether, that then as the day goes on, you really start to crave things, and it can sometimes lead to overeating or binging in the evening. Anything else? Okay. So say you are that person who says, well, I'm not a morning person, I'm not a breakfast person, I want to sleep a little longer, whatever the case may be. What are some, looking for easy options for breakfast? I know, getting up and making, omelets and whatever, pancakes and things, probably aren't going to happen on a weekday. So that's okay. So what types of things can you do? So one thing, that's where some of those bars could come in handy. Having a bar is something that you carry on your way to class or having when you get to class. Things like Greek yogurt, that can be, or even just regular yogurt, can be a really good source of protein, as something to keep on hand. cottage cheese. I actually knew someone, this was such a creative idea, who would take their cereal and, no, he would put his milk in his coffee cup. And then he would carry his cereal in a bag and then pour the cereal into the coffee cup, and then the coffee cup was like keeping the milk cool. So I know I thought, one of my coaches did that a long time ago, and I thought, wow, this is such like a great idea because his milk isn't spilling, and now he has his cereal and it's not soggy, and so he would do that as like a portable breakfast. So things like that. So finding if some cereal is something that you like, finding ways to make it portable. Maybe you don't have it right when you leave your house, but maybe you have it as you're walking or when you get to class. But really trying to find things that can be quick, that can be easy. Something like hard-boiled eggs can be a really good thing because you can make them like on Sunday or for the weekend, and then you can have them through the week. Other things, has anyone done overnight oats before? Yeah, so, I know that's something, that a lot of people will do as something that then is really like grab and go in the morning, or preparing something ahead of time, or even having leftovers. It doesn't have to be a traditional breakfast food to be something that you have at breakfast, but just really trying to have something and really trying to get in that balance. Even something like making a peanut butter sandwich, or another type of sandwich, and having that as something that you take with you. So then with snacks. So we said that snacks, are another thing. So along with our meals, having snacks. Snacks can really help to stabilize our blood sugar. So when we think about, nutrition, I know someone said in the beginning, nutrition can help to prevent different diseases. So one of them is diabetes. And one of the things with diabetes is if our eating throughout the day is really under, over, or really large portions, sometimes our blood sugar can start to go up and down. And for anyone who might be at risk for diabetes, or even if you're not, but if you have these prolonged periods of where your blood sugar is kind of going up and down with your eating, that can become problematic and could increase your risk later on for diabetes. So that's one reason that snacks can really be helpful, because they can help to stabilize your blood sugar in between meals. And we kind of talked about that, and as I did say, there is this handout. One thing, so one time I was doing a talk and I got this really great question, and the question was, what if I'm at a vending machine? So what could I get? What would you recommend as a snack from a vending machine? So I thought that was just a good question. So I just kind of wanted to share some ideas with you guys in case sometimes you are in that situation where maybe that's the option. Maybe there aren't really, maybe you don't have all these wonderful things on the list in your dorm room and you are, at a vending machine. So one of the things that I would suggest from a vending machine is a trail mix. Does anyone know why I might pick a trail mix? Besides the M&Ms? Anyone? Yeah. Protein and
lots of good fats.
it's going to have protein, it's going to have good fats, and it's also going to have some carbohydrates. So it's really pretty balanced when we think about the different macronutrients of fat, carbohydrates, and protein, that we're really getting all of that. It's something that can help us to feel full. It can give us longer lasting energy. If we just have carbohydrates as snacks, those definitely give us energy, but that's when we might feel, oh, that didn't really hold me, or now I'm feeling hungrier later. Sometimes if we just have like a piece of fruit, for example, you might feel like I'm not as satisfied as if maybe I had the fruit and some nuts. So absolutely, something like a trail mix is probably one of the first things that I would suggest, just because it really has that balance. Other than that, kind of looking for foods that are going to provide you like 2 of those macronutrients. So either that's going to have like carbs and some fat as a way to hold you, or carbs and some protein. Another thing could be pretzels, although those are just going to be carbs, but if you had something with that, if you had some nuts or if you had some cheese and you could pair that with the pretzels at all. Sometimes they might have different bars in a vending machine. That might be something that was going to have a little bit of protein and carbohydrate. That could be something else. Has anyone discovered any other good things in a vending machine, or anyone think of anything else?
Cornell has some really nice vending machines, like the Apple vending machine over in Man.
Yeah, and I forgot which one they sell, a little hummus thing. This one I
Right,
always get.
right.
The hummus little box.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's great too, because again, that's gonna have like the 2 food groups. It's gonna give you some protein from the hummus and then some carbohydrates from the pretzels. Do you say pretzels or?
Yeah, I like pretzel thing over here.
Yep.
There's also like peanut butter filled pretzels sometimes.
Yep, right, yeah, like the, what's that brand? I think Snyder's has some
Yeah.
that are like that, yeah. So that could be another thing that's going to be something with 2 food groups. And as, you know, and absolutely too, the other thing is, it's a good thing to keep in mind, is all foods in moderation. You know, that really is one of my favorite things because I think it can really apply to all situations. And so maybe, you know, if you feel like, well, the vending machine, that was the only option, it didn't have maybe my first choice, or I'm not as sure about this, or maybe it's higher in this or that than I would have liked, or lower in this or that, you know, really just kind of normalizing that of, you know, how often is it something where that's what you're doing, and, you know, that absolutely that all foods can fit. And it's really about what we're having and how often we're having it. Another thing that's really important is omega-3 fatty acids. So as anyone, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of omega-3 fatty acids, maybe heard of fish oil. So those are something that can really help with brain function. It's going to be in a lot of fatty fishes. So the most common one is probably something like salmon. It's going to have a lot of good oils, also just oils in general. And other types of fish. And so just really thinking about having some of those in your diet. They really can help with brain function. And even just for heart health, aside from that, for heart health, the American Heart Association recommends we have fish twice a week, just for heart health, never mind some of the benefits that it's going to give us for our brains. And there's lots of foods that are now fortified with omega-3 fatty acids as well. I know there's eggs. I think like Eggland's Best are the ones that are fortified. I've seen other foods. Yep, and then I think there was like a dairy, I feel like I've seen a dairy food too. I don't know if it was like a milk or cheese or something like that that was fortified. Tuna fishes too, sometimes you see them that are saying that they're higher in omega-3s. And so really just thinking about that. Doesn't need to be something that we're having every day, but just thinking about getting those throughout your week because they really can help with brain function among other things. Yeah.
How much fish or like what type of quality do you need to get in order to get the omega-3s? Like for instance, is sushi an okay option to get your fish intake?
So it's usually going to be in salmon, tuna, halibut. Those would be some of the main ones. In sushi, that's a good question. I mean, if you got one that I think the thing with sushi, a lot of times probably the fish portion that you get is going to be smaller. You know, so you might not get as much of it. If you are having one of those fishes, it definitely would have some in it. It's just a question of how much you are getting. I mean, a typical serving of fish would be about the size of a checkbook. I don't know that people use checkbooks that much anymore, but that's what we kind of learn is the serving size for fish, so that it's about the size and thickness of a checkbook. So if we think about sushi, it would be a lot of sushi to get that amount of fish just because there is less sushi in it, but you're still getting some. So I wouldn't kind of rely on that as your sole source, but that you could get some from it. In terms of quality of fish, like are you thinking, like if it's a frozen fish, is that what you were thinking, or?
Yeah, just like frozen, raw, baked, whatever, grilled, does it matter?
I wouldn't say that it would matter. I mean, I'm not aware of that being anything that decreases over time, or if the fish is frozen, or
I
anything.
just know that like if you cook vegetables, some people say that like some of the nutrients go away or something like that. So.
That is true with vegetables, but it's a very small amount. So the benefit of eating the vegetable and what the nutrition that you are getting is going to outweigh if you didn't have it because you didn't want it raw, or felt like you could never eat them cooked. It really is going to be a minuscule amount. So if there was, like I said, I'm not aware of any changes with the fish, but if it was, I would say that it would be minimal, because it's not something where the recommendations have said only have, you're only going to get it from the fish if it's caught from this area and prepared in this way. So that Yeah, so I wouldn't worry as much about that. Yep.
Yeah, I'm wondering is there a good way to tell if you think you might be deficient in some nutrient? Because it seems like, your eating might get worse also when your sleep gets worse and the regular exercise gets worse. Is there a way to try to separate this might be food related?
Yes, it's probably not a quick answer. One thing is absolutely blood tests, having labs done is one thing. Another thing is you might have physical signs, so whether that be brittle nails, whether it be thinning hair,